Welcome to True Crime with Lux. Today I'll be talking about who Dennis Nilsen was. Born in Fraserburgh, Aberdeenshire on November 23, 1945 to Elizabeth White and Olav Moxheim, Dennis was their second child. The family soon changed their last name to Nielsen. His parents married in May of 1942, and they lived with Elizabeth's parents. Olav was a Norwegian soldier who was a part of the Free Norwegian Forces. Their marriage wasn't great since Olav didn't take it seriously and would prioritize his work over his family. So after they had their third child, Elizabeth left him and they divorced in 1948. Dennis had a nice childhood, saying he had great memories with his grandfather, who he thought of as his hero, his protector. He said they would go on picnics in the Scottish countryside and take long walks. When his grandfather was away at sea, Dennis said life was empty. In 1951, his grandfather's health declined, and while out fishing in October, he died of a heart attack. His body was brought back to shore and returned to the family. Dennis said he remembered his mother asking him if he wanted to see him, and he replied yes. He was taken to the casket where his mother told him that his grandfather was just sleeping and had gone to a better place. Dennis began withdrawing from everyone around him after that, but stayed kind of close with his younger sister. He soon began to resent the attention his older brother got from the rest of the family, which made him withdraw even more. One day while Dennis was out on his own walking along the beach, he was dragged into the tide and submerged underwater, where he started to panic. Thinking about his grandfather, he thought he would come and save him, so he relaxed and stopped panicking. Another kid ended up pulling him out of the water. Soon after this, his mother moved the family into a flat, where she married Andrew Scott and had 4 more children. Dennis didn't like his new stepfather, saying he was an unfair disciplinarian, but as time passed, he started to respect him. During Dennis's early teen years, he discovered he was gay, which confused him, so he kept it a secret from the family. He never did anything with other boys, but did fondle his sister and brother to try to understand what he was attracted to, thinking he may be bisexual. His brother would tease him, suspecting he was gay, and started to call him a girl. Dennis was ashamed that his family was poor and never brought friends over, so at 14 he joined the Army Cadet Force, thinking that the British Army would be his escape from his family's poverty. He graduated in 1961 and passed the entrance exam for the Army. He enlisted for a 9-year service and was to do his training at St. Omer Barracks in Aldershot, Hampshire. Within weeks of being there, he was excelling at his duties and said being there was the happiest time of his life. He served for 11 years and retired in 1972 as a corporal. He moved in with his family until he figured out his next move. While there, his mother voiced her concern that he hadn't married a woman yet and would push him to meet someone so he could start a family. He, along with his older brother and his family, watched a documentary on gay men. While watching it, Dennis started to defend gay rights, which started a fight between him and his brother, who then told their mother that Dennis was gay. From that point on, Dennis cut all contact with his family and moved to London to start training to join the Metropolitan Police. In April of 1973, Dennis completed his training and became a cadet. He said he missed the army and began drinking every night while alone. He started going to gay pubs and bringing men home, but felt like he was just lending his body to them, wanting a deeper connection with someone. Feeling like his life was at odds with his job, he resigned in December and started working as a security guard, before finally finding a job as a civil servant in May of 1974. His coworkers said he was quiet and a bit of a loner. He was promoted in 1979 to an acting executive officer, and in 82 was officially given the job. Dennis met David Gallichan in November of 1975, and after the two stayed up all night talking, they decided to get a place together. They bought a ground floor flat on Melrose Avenue, and Dennis took care of the bills while David took care of the home. Their relationship soon turned, and they started sleeping in separate bedrooms, rarely having sex. David said that Dennis started to become verbally abusive before telling him he had to move out in 1977. Dennis had a handful of relationships over the next 18 months, but nothing that lasted more than a few weeks. He started to believe he was unfit to live with and began throwing himself into his work and getting drunk every night. He killed his first victim on December 30th, 1978. He had met 14-year-old Stephen Holmes at a pub. Inviting him back to his house for drinks, Dennis thought he was 17. They both got drunk and passed out that night, and in the morning when Dennis woke up, he decided that Stephen would stay with him whether he liked it or not, so he grabbed a necktie and strangled him before drowning him in a bucket of water. He then washed the body before placing it back in his bed. He proceeded to masturbate over the body twice before waiting for rigor mortis to pass so he could place him under the floorboards. Stephen's body lay under those floorboards for 8 months before Dennis burned it in a bonfire on August 11th of 1979. Dennis tried again on October 11th when he brought Andrew Ho back to his place. The two had sex, and when Dennis attempted to strangle him, Andrew was able to escape. He reported the incident to the police, who questioned Dennis, but when Andrew decided not to press charges, just 2 months later on December 3rd, Dennis met Kenneth Ockenden at a pub and invited him back to his place for some drinks. While there, Dennis gave him his headphones to listen to music before wrapping the cord around Kenneth's neck and strangling him. The next day, Dennis brought a camera and used it to take photos of Kenneth's body. He then wrapped him in plastic and put him under the floorboards as well. Over the next few days, he would take the body out and set it on an armchair next to him while he watched TV. He took his next victim on May 17, 1980. He met 16-year-old Martin Duffy by the railroad tracks. The kid had been sleeping there for the past few days, so when Dennis offered him food and a bed, Martin was excited and went with Dennis back to his flat. After Martin had fallen asleep, Dennis strangled him and drowned him in the sink. He then took a bath with his body, saying he admired how youthful it looked. He placed him on his bed, where he would sit on top of him while masturbating and complimenting and caressing the body. Dennis kept him in a cupboard for a few days before noticing the bloating and moved it under the floorboards. Over the next 7 months, Dennis killed 5 more men, 4 of which have never been identified. 26-year-old William Sutherland was the only one he remembered the name of. He placed all of their bodies under his floorboards. When he began to notice the smell and the insects the bodies were attracting, he said that when he checked on the bodies, he saw that they were infested with maggots. He tried to cover the smell by placing deodorants with them and sprayed insecticides twice a day, but it didn't cover the smell. In December, he took the bodies out and dismembered them before making a bonfire in the backyard to burn all of the remains. He placed a tire in the fire to cover up the smell. After the fire would die down, he'd search through the ashes to make sure there were no bones that could be identified. He had found a skull that he had smashed with a rake. In January 1981, Dennis brought an 18-year-old back to his place with the promise of a drinking contest. When they arrived, Dennis strangled him with a tie and placed him under the floorboards. He killed 3 more people who were never identified and placed them under there as well. In February, he removed the organs from the bodies, burning some and throwing the rest in the trash. His next identified victim was 23-year-old Malcolm Barlow, who he found passed out in front of his house. When Dennis asked him what was wrong, he was informed that Malcolm was on medication for epilepsy, and it made his legs weak, so Dennis took him inside and called for an ambulance. The next day, when Malcolm was released from the hospital, he went back to the house to thank him. Dennis invited him inside where they ate and had a few drinks. When Malcolm fell asleep, Dennis strangled him and put his body in the cabinet under the sink. Mid-1981, Dennis was told that he would have to move out of his flat due to the landlord doing renovations. He at first didn't want to leave, but soon after being offered £1,000, he said he would leave. Before moving, Dennis dismembered the bodies and had another bonfire in the backyard to burn them. At his new place in Cranley Gardens, Dennis had an attic flat, so he couldn't store bodies under the floorboards anymore. So for the next few months, he was unable to assault anyone. That was until March 1982, when he met 23-year-old John Howlett at a pub and invited him back to his flat. They had a few more drinks and watched TV until John fell asleep. I'm so sorry, I'm sick, and I know that it's probably coming through on the mic. Dennis attempted to strangle him in his sleep, but John woke up and fought back, trying to strangle Dennis instead. After 3 attempts, Dennis thought he had finally killed John, but discovered he was still breathing. He went to the bathroom and filled the tub, where he then drowned John. Over the next few days, Dennis had marks on his neck from the strangulation. In May, he met Carl Stoddard, who was depressed from a recent breakup, so Dennis invited him back to his place, saying that it wasn't for sex, just to have a few drinks and that Carl could stay the night. Carl fell asleep in a sleeping bag and awoke to being strangled, thinking he had just gotten wrapped in the cord from the sleeping bag and thought Dennis was trying to help him before he passed out. He awoke again, this time feeling himself submerged in water. He fought back, asking Dennis to please stop. Dennis held him under the water until he believed he was dead, and then placed him in a kitchen chair where he realized that Carl was still breathing. Once Dennis saw this, he began to rub his limbs and chest to increase circulation and put blankets on him to warm him back up. When Carl was awake and aware, Dennis explained that he had almost strangled himself in the sleeping bag, and Dennis saved his life. In September, Dennis brought 27-year-old Graham Allen back to his flat to have dinner. He strangled him, leaving his body in the bathtub for 3 days before dismembering him in the kitchen. His last victim was 20-year-old Stephen Sinclair. They met on January 26, 1983, and went back to Dennis's flat where Stephen fell asleep. Dennis strangled him and noticed that there were bandages on his wrist from where Stephen had tried to take his own life. After he was dead, Dennis took him into the bathroom and bathed him before laying him in the bed and going to sleep next to him. He later dismembered the body, placing them in plastic bags and storing them in drawers and cabinets. Over time, he would flush small pieces of the bodies down the toilet to dispose of them. In February, Dennis and other tenants made complaints to the landlord that the plumbing in the building was blocked. When a worker was sent to look into the plumbing problem, he discovered what he described as flesh-like substance and small bones in the drain on the side of the building. He reported it to his supervisor, who came out to look and decided they would come back the next day to investigate further. Dennis asked them what they thought was the problem with the plumbing, and when they described what they saw, he responded with, "Looks to me like someone has just been flushing down their Kentucky Fried Chicken." The next morning, when the men returned, they found the drain had been emptied out, but they found a few bones in the pipe from the attic flat. Believing them to be human, they called the police. The police had the bones looked at and discovered they were in fact human, so they returned to the building and asked who lived in the attic flat that the bones had come from. They waited for Dennis to return from work and asked to look in his flat since that's where the blockage had come from. When they entered, they immediately smelled rotting flesh. Dennis asked why they needed to see his drain and why it required police. They informed him that the blockage was human remains that had come from his drains. Dennis pretended to be shocked and said he didn't know how that was possible. The police weren't buying it and told him to tell them where the rest of the body was. Dennis told them where to find the plastic bags with the remains spread throughout the flat. He said that if he was going to tell them about the body, then he wanted to tell them the whole story from the beginning, but he wanted to go to the police station first. While on their way to the station, they asked him if it was 1 or 2 bodies, to which he replied, "It's about 15 or 16 since 1978. During his interview on February 10th, he told them where more body parts were hidden in the flat, saying that there were 3 bodies. He then let them know that he had killed 12 or 13 people at his last residence. He even told them about the 7 other men he tried to kill but was unsuccessful. He then was taken to his old flat and showed police the areas in the back where he had burned the bodies. They were only able to identify 1 body with fingerprints, so Dennis was charged with the murder of Stephen Sinclair. Police interviewed him 16 times over the next few days. Dennis didn't have a motive for why he killed them, saying he had hoped the police could tell him why he had done it. He explained that it was never planned when he killed, that it would just happen, and afterwards he would clean the body and just talk to it or masturbate next to it, but he never had sex with them, saying that they were just too perfect. He would then destroy any of their personal belongings. On February 11, 1983, he was sent to Brixton Prison to be held on remand until trial. He refused to wear a prison uniform, believing he was innocent until proven guilty. While being held in his cell, he threw the contents of his toilet at the guards and was found guilty of assaulting prison officers and sentenced to 56 days in solitary confinement. His trial officially began on May 26th, where he was charged with 6 counts of murder and 2 of attempted murder. He was given a public defender that he kept firing in hopes of representing himself, but he was denied over and over, so he reappointed the public defender. He had planned to plead guilty to all charges, but when it came time, he actually pled not guilty by diminished responsibility. During his trial, it wasn't a question of if he killed these men, but what his mental state was during it. The prosecution said he was sane and knew what he was doing, while his defense said he suffered from diminished responsibility, rendering him incapable of forming the intention to commit murder, and should be convicted of manslaughter. During the trial, the men who survived Dennis's attack took the stand and told their stories of how they would have a few drinks with him, and when they fell asleep, they would wake up to Dennis strangling them. The jury started their deliberations on November 3rd, and the next day came back with a verdict of guilty of 6 counts of murder and 2 of attempted murder. He was sentenced to life imprisonment with a recommendation that he serve a minimum of 25 years. He was sent to Wormwood Scrubs, and and labeled a Category A prisoner, which meant he got his own cell and was able to mix with the population. In December, he was cut on the face and chest by another inmate, resulting in 89 stitches. He was transferred to Wakeville Prison, where he stayed until 1990 before being transferred to Full Sutton due to concerns for his safety. In 1993, he was transferred again to Whitemoor for his safety and kept from other inmates. He was sent back to Full Sutton in 2003, where he stayed until he died in 2018. On May 10, 2018, he was taken to York Hospital for severe stomach pains. They discovered he had a ruptured abdominal aortic aneurysm. They repaired it, but on May 12th, he suffered a blood clot from the surgery and died. Thank you for listening. If you enjoyed the podcast, please like and share it with your friends. Stay safe, and I'll be talking to you next week.